Iron Will. How one black U.S. Marine transformed a crippled tank into a mobile fortress against 500 enemy soldiers. The crippled giant, the desert sun, a relentless forge, hammered down on the M1A1 Abrams tank, baking its steel skin to an unbearable heat. Inside the cramped, stale air of the commander's station, Sergeant Marcus Johnson, call sign Iron, wiped a sheen of sweat from his brow. His eyes, sharp and alert despite the exhaustion, scanned the desolate expanse through his periscope. Dust devils danced in the distance, mocking their isolation. For 3 days, their platoon had been pushing deep into enemy territory, a spearhead probing the underbelly of a burgeoning insurgent syndicate. Now, they were alone, separated from the main column by a sudden brutal sandstorm that had erupted 2 nights prior, swallowing their comms and scattering their formation. Status report, driver. Marcus's voice, calm and measured, cut through the low hum of the tank's auxiliary power unit. PFC Ramirez, barely out of boot camp but possessing a surprising tenacity, responded, "Engines stable, Sergeant. Fuel still good for another 100 clicks, maybe, but that right track, it's worse than I thought." Ramirez's voice crackled with a nervous energy that Marcus knew well. This was the young man's first real deployment. "Elaborate, Ramirez," Marcus pressed, shifting his gaze to the internal diagnostics display. "Looks like a busted return roller, Sergeant," Ramirez replied, his tone tinged with frustration. "And a few broken end connectors. We can't put any serious torque on it without throwing the whole track. We'd be lucky to hit 10 miles an hour without shaking ourselves apart. Forget maneuvering." Marcus's jaw tightened. An Abrams, designed for speed and overwhelming firepower, was only truly fearsome when it could move. Crippled, it was a stationary target, a steel coffin, waiting for a funeral pyre. He toggled his intercom. "Gunner, loader, hear that?" Corporal Davies, the seasoned gunner with a calm demeanor and a dead aim, responded first. "Copy, Sergeant. So, no joyride today." His voice was flat, masking an underlying concern. Lance Corporal Chen, the quiet and efficient loader, added, "Main gun still good, Sergeant, ready to pop some tops." "Hold fire, Chen," Marcus commanded. "Let's assess. Davies, get me a perimeter scan, thermal and optical. Ramirez, can you even get us to a hull-down position without tearing that track completely?" Ramirez hesitated. "Maybe, Sergeant. Slowly, like crawling through molasses. Anything more than a gentle pivot and we risk it." Marcus's mind raced. Their position was a shallow depression amidst a series of rolling dunes, offering decent concealment, but limited fields of fire. They needed elevation, a strategic advantage. He zoomed his periscope in, scrutinizing the distant horizon. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, but it offered no comfort. It merely highlighted their vulnerability. "All right, listen up, team," Marcus began, his voice projecting authority, a rock in a shifting sandstorm. "We're stuck, but we're not dead. Not yet. We've got a damn good tank under us, even if she's limping. Our priority is to establish a defensible position, conserve ammo, and make contact with command." He pulled up a map on his internal display, marking their current position, and a cluster of rocky outcrops about a kilometer to their west. "See those ridges?" he pointed. "That's our ticket. Higher ground, better visibility and some natural cover to boot. Ramirez, I need you to nurse us over there, slow and steady. Davies, keep an eye out for anything that moves. Chen, prepare a defensive loadout for the main gun, high explosives first, then Sabot." The journey was agonizingly slow. The M1A1, usually a roaring behemoth, now groaned and clanked, each movement a desperate struggle against its own weight and damaged track. Dust billowed around them, churned up by the crippled track, creating a plume that could easily betray their position. Marcus's senses were on high alert. He could practically taste the grit of the desert, smell the diesel fumes mixing with the faint scent of fear that lingered in the air. The internal temperature of the tank was oppressive, the metal walls radiating heat, making every breath a chore. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the cluster of rocks. Marcus guided Ramirez to a spot where the tank's hull was partially obscured, presenting only its heavily armored turret to the most likely avenues of approach. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best they could do. From this vantage point, they had a commanding view of the surrounding terrain, a tactical advantage that could buy them precious time. "All right, perimeter check again," Marcus ordered, his voice still steady. "Davies, thermal scan on a continuous loop. Chen, ready the coaxial machine gun. Ramirez, shut down the main engine, keep the auxiliary running for power to the systems. Conserve fuel. We don't know how long we'll be here." As darkness began to creep across the desert, bringing with it a deceptive coolness, a sense of foreboding settled over the crew. They were a beacon in the vast emptiness, a single, crippled Goliath, waiting for unseen Davids. Marcus knew, deep in his gut, that the silence was temporary. The insurgents wouldn't miss a chance to take out an Abrams, especially one that appeared to be alone and vulnerable. He pulled out a worn photograph from his chest pocket, his wife and 2 young daughters, smiling. He held it for a moment, a silent promise, a source of iron will that burned brighter than any desert sun. His comms remained silent, a stark reminder of their isolation. They were on their own. The first sign of trouble came with the pre-dawn light, not through the periscope, but through the faint, rhythmic thrumming vibrations transmitted through the tank's chassis. Corporal Davies, ever vigilant at the gunner's station, reported it first. "Movement, Sergeant. Bearing 270, range 2.5 clicks. Thermal signature, multiple contacts." Marcus clicked his comm. "Ramirez, start the main engine, idle only. Chen, full ready on the main gun, and keep that coax spooled up. Davies, give me a precise count and classification." The main engine rumbled to life, a deep, reassuring growl that momentarily pushed back the encroaching dread, but the numbers Davies was calling out quickly brought it back. "More contacts, Sergeant. A lot more. Looks like a full company-size element, maybe more. Infantry, moving in column. They're trying to stay low using the dunes for cover, but my thermal's picking them up clearly. 500, maybe more," Marcus murmured, his breath catching slightly. He zoomed in on the thermal image displayed on his screen. A sea of heat signatures, dark blots against the cooler desert, snaking towards their position. It was an overwhelming force, far outnumbering anything a single tank crew could hope to face. His mind went into overdrive, calculating, strategizing. "They're not expecting us to be operational," Marcus stated, more to himself than his crew. "They think they've found an easy kill. We'll disabuse them of that notion." His voice, though calm, held an edge of steel. "Main gun ready, Sergeant," Chen reported, his voice tight. "Target acquisition, Davies," Marcus ordered. "Wait for my command. Let them get closer. I want to make every round count." The enemy forces, unaware of the lurking beast, continued their approach. The thrumming grew louder, more distinct. Now, through the optical sights, Marcus could make out individual figures, their light weapons glinting in the pale morning light. They were poorly equipped, a ragtag army compared to the Marines, but their sheer numbers were terrifying. They spread out, forming a crescent formation, clearly planning to envelop the abandoned tank. "Range 1.5 clicks, Sergeant," Davies reported, his crosshairs steady on the lead element. "1 click," Marcus confirmed, his finger hovering over the fire control button. Hold, now," the M1A1 Abrams roared. The main gun, 120 Element 2056 smoothbore, spat fire and thunder. The high explosive round screamed across the desert, impacting with devastating force amidst the lead enemy column. A blinding flash, a concussive boom, and then bodies, dust, and debris erupted into the air. The sound echoed across the silent desert, a grim announcement of their presence. Chaos erupted among the enemy ranks. Their formation shattered, men scrambling for cover, their surprise quickly turning to fear. But they were too numerous, too committed. Their initial shock gave way to a surge of anger. Small arms fire, sporadic at first, began to pepper the tank's thick armor. The pings and clangs against the hull, though harmless, created a cacophony of metallic drums within the tank. Coax, Davies, suppress their left flank. Chen, next round, Sabat, target that group attempting to flank right. Marcus barked, his commands rapid fire cutting through the dead. The coaxial M240 machine gun chattered to life, spitting a torrent of 7.62mm rounds. Tracer fire ripped through the enemy ranks, cutting down men and forcing others to retreat. Chen, with practiced speed, slammed a Sabat round into the breach. The main gun roared again, this time a searing rod of depleted uranium tearing through a clustered group of insurgents, leaving a gaping hole in their advance. "They're pushing hard, Sergeant," Ramirez shouted, his voice strained. RPG hits on the hull, no penetration. Marcus felt the impact, a jarring thud that vibrated through his seat. The tank shuddered but held. The M1A1's armor was designed to withstand such blows, but sustained fire was another matter. He could smell the acrid scent of burnt propellant, mixed with the sweat of his crew. "Conserve main gun rounds," Marcus ordered. "Davies, focus on the heaviest concentrations with the cokes. Chen, keep a sabot ready for any perceived threats. Ramirez, keep that engine idling. If we need to pivot, it needs to be ready." The battle raged. Wave after wave of insurgents, fueled by fanaticism and sheer numbers, threw themselves at the seemingly invulnerable tank. They swarmed like angry ants, their small arms fire a constant, drumming rain against the armor. Marcus, switching between his periscope and 50 caliber machine gun, mounted on his commander's hatch, laid down devastating fire. The 50 cal roared, its heavy slugs tearing through flesh and flimsy cover with ease. He saw faces contorted in rage and fear, their eyes burning with a desperate resolve. He knew this was unsustainable. They couldn't hold off 500 men indefinitely, not with limited ammunition and a crippled tank. They were inflicting heavy casualties, but the enemy still advanced. He could feel the pressure mounting, the steel walls of the tank feeling less like a fortress and more like a cave. Doubt, a venomous whisper, tried to creep into his mind. Then a voice cut through the chaos, clear and strong in his mind, echoing a passage he had read many times. "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Joshua 1:9. It was a passage his grandmother used to quote, a source of unwavering strength. Marcus closed his eyes for a split second, taking a deep breath. "All right," Marie yelled, his voice resonating with renewed conviction. "They want this tank? They'll have to pry it from our cold dead hands, and we ain't dead yet." A cheer, ragged but fierce, erupted from his crew. The fire from the tank intensified, a renewed wave of suppressive fire sweeping across the dunes. Marcus knew they had to be smarter, not just harder. He needed a plan, a way to turn their disadvantage into an unexpected weapon. The crippled tank was not just a target, it was bait. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and sacrifice. The sun climbed higher, casting long, stark shadows across the battlefield. The air inside the tank was thick with the smell of sweat, cordite, and fear, but the fear was slowly giving way to a grim determination. The insurgents, though repeatedly repelled by the tank's fearsome firepower, were persistent. They had adapted, breaking into smaller, more agile units, attempting to bypass the main gun's limited traverse by attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. "Sergeant, they're trying to get behind us," Ramirez shouted, his voice now hoarse. "Small arms fire, bearing 190. Marcus cursed. The damaged track meant they couldn't turn the hull quickly to meet the threat. He had to rely on the turret's traverse. "Davies, snap traverse to 190. Cokes, suppress." The turret whined as it spun, the coaxial spitting fire, but the enemy was learning. They hugged the terrain, making themselves difficult targets. Marcus knew this was their critical vulnerability. His main gun had limited rounds, and while the coaxial and 50 cal had more, they were not inexhaustible. He needed a way to thin their numbers and break their will to fight. An idea sparked in Marcus's mind, daring and unconventional. "Ramirez, can you give me a slow, controlled pivot to the left, just enough to expose our rear slightly, then pull back?" Ramirez sounded confused. "Expose our rear, Sergeant? That's where they're weakest." "Exactly," Marcus said, a grim smile forming on his lips. "It's what they expect, it's what they're looking for. Make it look like we're trying to escape, but struggling." Davies interjected, "Sergeant, that's a hell of a gamble. What's the play?" "Bait," Marcus replied, his eyes gleaming with a newfound resolve. "We're going to bait them into a killing zone. They see a crippled tank struggling to flee, they'll press the advantage, they'll rush." "Chen, how many main gun rounds left?" "5 sabot, 3 heat, Sergeant," Chen reported, his voice betraying a hint of trepidation. "Good, save the heat round. We'll need them for something specific." "Davies, prepare to switch to the M240. I want maximum suppression when I give the order." "Ramirez, when I say move, pivot left, very slowly, then stop after a few degrees, then pivot right, as if you're trying to correct." The plan was set. Ramirez executed the maneuver with practiced care, the damaged track grinding and clanking, giving the impression of a tank on its last legs. The insurgents, seeing their opportunity, surged forward. Their shouts of triumph echoed across the dunes as they closed in, emboldened by the perceived vulnerability. They were drawing closer, masses of men abandoning what little cover they had, eager to deliver the killing blow. "They're swarming, Sergeant," Davies yelled, his voice strained. "Range 500 meters and closing fast." Marcus watched them through his periscope, a predatory glint in his eyes. He let them come, letting the temptation of an easy kill draw them into his trap. The scent of their desperation, their bloodlust, was almost palpable. He waited, his finger hovering over the fire button of his. "Now," Marcus roared. The M1A1 Abrams, instead of continuing its retreat, abruptly ceased its simulated struggle. With a surge of power, Marcus engaged his commander's independent thermal viewer, and with his 50 cal, raked the charging enemy, cutting down scores. Simultaneously, Davies, already anticipating the command, unleashed a continuous stream of coaxial fire sweeping across the densest concentrations of attackers. But the real surprise came next. Chen, heat round, bearing 060, impact point 10 meters in front of the rock formation. "Fire," Marcus commanded. The main gun thundered, and the heat round screamed out. It wasn't aimed at a direct enemy concentration. Instead, it impacted just in front of a jagged rock formation, a geological feature that Marcus had observed earlier. The blast created a massive cloud of dust and debris, but more importantly, it detonated a small previously unnoticed cache of enemy munitions, hidden amongst the rocks, triggering a chain reaction of secondary explosions that ripped through a significant portion of the flanking enemy forces. The earth trembled, and a mushroom cloud of fire and smoke rose into the air. The insurgents' momentum shattered, their triumphant charge turned into a panicked rout. The sheer audacity of the move, turning their own hidden assets against them, coupled with the overwhelming firepower of the tank's machine guns, broke their morale. The sound of their retreat was now distinct, shouts turning into cries of fear and confusion. "They're breaking, Sarge," Chen yelled, a note of exhilaration in his voice. "They're running. Keep the fire up, Davies. Suppressive fire. Maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup," Marcus commanded, his voice filled with an almost primal triumph. He continued to lay down a steady stream of 50 cal fire, chasing the fleeing enemy, making them pay for every step of their retreat. The battle lasted only a few more furious minutes, before the last of the 500 plus enemy soldiers had either fled or been neutralized. The desert, once a canvas for their overwhelming numbers, was now littered with their dead and wounded, silent testament to the devastating power of a single crippled tank commanded by an iron will. A profound silence descended, broken only by the panting breaths of the crew and the distant, fading sounds of fleeing men. The interior of the tank was hot, stifling, but filled with an electric energy of survival and victory. Like this video, if you believe in the power of determination and honor, the immediate aftermath was a blur of adrenaline-fueled tasks. Marcus ordered Davies to scan for any lingering threats, while Chen began to account for their remaining ammunition, a grim tally that highlighted just how close they had come to running dry. Ramirez, still breathing heavily, checked the engine and the damaged track, assessing if any further damage had been sustained during their desperate fight. The tank, though victorious, bore the scars of battle, scorch marks from RPG impacts, countless pockmarks from small arms fire, and a thick layer of dust and grime. As the last vestiges of adrenaline faded, a profound exhaustion settled over the crew. They sat in their respective stations, muscles aching, ears ringing, the stench of cordite still heavy in the air. The vast emptiness of the desert, once a source of terror, now seemed to offer a quiet solace. Hours later, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep purple, a faint, rhythmic thumping became audible. It was a familiar sound, one that brought a lump to Marcus's throat. "Helicopter, Sergeant," Davies exclaimed, his voice hoarse but filled with relief. "Bearing 310, closing fast." It was a pair of Apache attack helicopters, followed by a transport, a clear sign that command had finally re-established contact and dispatched reinforcement. The feeling of relief that washed over Marcus was immense, a tidal wave that threatened to buckle his knees. He had held out, they had held out. As the helicopters landed nearby, kicking up a whirlwind of dust, a recovery team and a squad of Marines quickly approached their position. Marcus opened his hatch, climbing out into the cool evening air, his body stiff and sore. He stood tall, a figure of strength and endurance, though his uniform was caked with dust and sweat, his face streaked with grime. A major from the recovery team approached him, a look of awe and disbelief on his face. "Sergeant Johnson, Marcus, is that truly you?" "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, his voice gravelly. "Call sign Iron, reporting mission accomplished. Insurgent forces engaged and repelled. No friendly casualties, sir." The major simply stared at the carnage surrounding the tank, the scattered bodies, the destroyed enemy positions, the sheer scale of the defeat inflicted upon an overwhelming force. "Sergeant," he finally managed, "intelligence estimated over 500 enemy combatants in this sector. You held them off, with a single crippled tank." Marcus simply nodded, his gaze sweeping over his crew who were now emerging from the tank, looking just as exhausted, but undeniably proud. Ramirez, Davies, Chen, they had faced hell and emerged victorious, their bond forged in the crucible of battle. Later, after a quick medical check and a hot meal, Marcus sat alone atop his tank, now undergoing preliminary repairs. The desert night was cool and clear, the stars blazing with an indifferent majesty. He thought of the words of Joshua 1:9, which had echoed in his mind during the darkest moments. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." It wasn't just courage that had saved them, he realized. It was the training, the discipline, the sheer ingenuity born of desperation, and the unwavering faith in his crew and their shared purpose. It was the iron will that had pushed him to find a way, even when all odds were stacked against them. He had transformed a crippled tank into more than a fortress, he had made it a symbol of defiance. He thought of the men they had fought, and the cost of war. The dead on the battlefield were not just statistics, they were individuals, driven by their own beliefs, however misguided. His victory was a necessary one, but it came at a price, a weight that would forever rest on his conscience. Yet, in that moment, under the vast indifferent sky he felt a profound sense of duty fulfilled. He had protected his crew, he had held the line, and he had upheld the honor of his uniform. His comms crackled. It was his platoon commander. "Iron, glad to hear your voice, Sergeant. We were worried sick. Incredible work out there, truly incredible. We'll be pulling you and your crew back to base tomorrow. Get some rest, Marine, you've earned it." Marcus nodded, a small weary smile touching his lips. "Understood, sir." Iron out. He looked out at the sleeping desert, then down at the scarred but steadfast FEM-1A1 Abrams. It was just a machine, but today it had been a testament to human courage and resilience. He had faced his fears, pushed his limits, and in doing so, had discovered the boundless strength that lay within himself and his team. The echoes of battle might fade, but the iron will forged in that desperate stand would last a lifetime. Drop a comment below sharing what moment inspired you most in this story.